Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Lisa Mateo.
Lisa, we begin with President-elect Donald Trump continuing to fill out his new administration. He's tapped Jamieson Greer as U.S. Trade Representative. We get the details from Bloomberg's Doug Krisner.
The selection of Greer highlights the central role tariffs will play in Trump's economic agenda. He's a longtime protege of Robert Lighthizer, and he was involved in Trump's first-term trade policy decisions, including steep duties on China and the negotiations for a partial trade deal with Beijing concluded shortly before the outbreak of the pandemic. Greer is now expected to play a pivotal role in implementing the president-elect's tariff plans, including 25% levies on Canadian and Mexican goods, as well as an additional 10% on existing Chinese tariffs. In New York, I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, Doug. Trump has also made another key nomination. Sources say he's selected Kevin Hassett to lead the National Economic Council. We get more from Bloomberg's Brendan Murray.
Hassett was head of Trump's Council of Economic Advisors in his first White House. So this is the sort of economic think tank behind the White House's policy decisions. He would have been involved in designing the tariff rollout in the first Trump administration, trying to make sure that the products that had tariffs imposed on them didn't become inflationary. So it was trying to be very selective in that process.
Bloomberg's Brendan Murray says Hassett's appointment does not require Senate confirmation.
No, Lisa, Kevin Hassett and Jamieson Greer are just part of the latest flurry of staffing announcements from President-elect Trump. He's also named Vince Haley to lead the Domestic Policy Council. That office is likely to weigh in on immigration, urban crime, and education. Trump has tapped private investor John Phelan to be the next Secretary of the Navy, and he's picked Jay Bhattacharya to lead the National Institutes of Health. Bhattacharya is a Stanford professor who has called COVID lockdowns the biggest public health mistake we've ever made.
And Nathan, the latest Trump picks follow his selection earlier this week of Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary. Bloomberg opinion columnist Bill Dudley says Bessent will be key in communicating with Trump on the impact some of his policies may have on the market.
I think he can explain very clearly the consequences of not having a good set of policies in terms of what that means for the budget deficit path, the consequences for interest rates, and if interest rates go up, the consequences of interest rates for broader markets, including the stock market.
Now, Bloomberg opinion columnist Bill Dudley says Bessent will face two big challenges: ensuring that the world's largest government debt market functions properly and pursuing a fiscal policy that doesn't send the country's debt service costs soaring.
Lisa, Donald Trump's threat of tariffs on Canada is prompting a warning from Goldman Sachs. The bank's head of commodities research says a 25% levy on Canadian imports would have significant consequences for consumers, would probably raise fuel prices in the U.S. The U.S. imports almost 4 million barrels of Canadian oil per day, and that allows American producers to export more of their crude. Still, Goldman says Trump's tariff threat could be a negotiating tool.
Well, now to the latest from the Middle East. A ceasefire underway in Lebanon. Israel and Hezbollah have paused a 14-month conflict that's killed thousands and forced more than 1 million people to flee their homes. President Biden says he hopes the truce will lead to a permanent end to the fighting.
Civilians on both sides will soon be able to safely return to their communities and begin to rebuild their homes, their schools, their farms, their businesses, and their very lives.
Well, President Biden spoke from the White House Rose Garden. Bloomberg's Stuart Livingstone Wallace has more on the agreement.
It's initially a 60-day ceasefire, and there's basically to give them a little bit of room or breathing space to get something a bit more comprehensive. But it's back to exactly what we've been discussing now for several weeks, which is something resembling this UN resolution from 14 years ago, or thereabouts, or 18 years ago, isn't it? And that is going to be much tougher to get hold of and to grasp and to get some sort of agreement on.
Bloomberg's Stuart Livingston Wallace says the truce came after a flurry of shuttle diplomacy from President Biden's top Middle East envoy. It drew objections from hardliners and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition.
Turning to markets now, Lisa. Stocks are going to enter this Thanksgiving Day holiday in record fashion. Equities have gained for 7 straight sessions. Amanda Agati, Chief Investment Officer at PNC, says investors should keep putting their money to work.
It's better to stay fully invested and ride some of this volatility wave than have this FOMO kind of fear of missing out and sitting on the sidelines. This market wants to move higher. And so, in the absence of a lot of policy clarity, I think the momentum will continue to carry the market into the new year.
PNC's Amanda Agati notes the S&P 500 notched its 52nd record of the year yesterday.
And Nathan, some stocks on the move this morning and a couple of tech firms taking a big hit. Shares of Dell down 12%. The company's PC business revenue, well, it missed analyst estimates, and shares of HP down 10%. Sales in its PC unit rose, almost missed projections.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on CrowdStrike shares as well, Lisa. They are down more than 5%. The cybersecurity software firm issued a fourth quarter earnings forecast falling short of investor expectations. It is the company's second miss since a flawed CrowdStrike update crashed millions of devices operating on Microsoft's Windows systems back in the summer.
And investors are getting a slew of economic reports to digest ahead of the Thanksgiving Day holiday. They include a key reading on inflation. We get a preview from Bloomberg's Michael McKee in Washington.
Economists get their Thanksgiving cornucopia today. 24 economic indicators will be released. Given Thursday is a national holiday and Friday is essentially one, the statistical agencies have moved everything to today. The star of the show is the October PCE report at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. Headline and core inflation expected to rise in the Fed's key price indicator. Consumer spending expected to ease a bit. Little change is forecast for jobless claims as the labor market remains relatively tight, but capital goods orders are likely to reflect a slowdown in business investment. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Lisa. The weather, traffic, and other factors could slow Americans' effort to get to their Thanksgiving destinations. Millions expected to fly and hit the roads. This all comes as the TSA expects to screen more than 2.9 million air travelers today. Elisa Farbstein is a TSA spokesperson.
In the 23 years TSA has been in existence, the top 10 busiest days in our history have all happened this year, all since Memorial Day weekend. And then on July 7th, we broke 3 million for the first time. So we screened 3 million people for the very first time July 7th. It is possible that we might do that just again on Sunday.
But it's not the weather causing problems so far. It's a lack of staffing. Last night, flights at Newark Airport in New Jersey were delayed after the FAA issued a ground delay because of an air traffic controller shortage. Law enforcement officials say a shoplifting ring that stole nearly $2 million in clothes and beauty products from Macy's and other well-known stores in the U.S. and then resold them has now been busted. The story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Queens DA Melinda Katz says 5 New Yorkers have been charged with felony possession of stolen property, conspiracy, and other related crimes. According to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who joined the DA and other law enforcement officials in Queens, nationally businesses lose roughly $100 billion, and the average family pays $500 more a year because of the impact of organized retail theft. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Australia's House of Representatives today passed a bill that would ban children younger than 16 from social media, leaving it to the Senate to finalize the world's first such law. The major parties backed the bill that would make platforms including TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, X, and Instagram liable for fines of up to $33 million for failures to prevent young people from holding accounts. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Lisa.
Thanks, John. All right, time now for a Bloomberg Sports update. For that, we bring in John Stashower. Hey there, John.
Hey, Lisa. When we last saw the Dodgers, they were winning the World Series despite a depleted rotation. So, sure enough, first free agent signing of the offseason has the Dodgers adding a starting pitcher, 2-time Cy Young winner. Blake Snell goes to L.A. for 5 years, $182 million. The world champs seem to have an endless supply of cash. They are also in on Juan Soto, along with the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. Only 2 weeks left of the college football regular season. The playoff committee out with what the expanded 12-team field would look like now. Indiana stays in despite its loss at Ohio State. Arizona State is now the Big 12 team that's in. The 4 teams that would get first-round byes would be Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise State. Auburn and Alabama play Saturday. Their basketball teams both ranked in the top 10, beat ranked teams. Bama took down Houston in overtime. Auburn beat North Carolina. Also, top-ranked Kansas got by Duke 75-72, and second-ranked UConn, who went 37-3 last year, suffered its second one-point loss in as many days, upset by Colorado. Rutgers got 36 points from star freshman Dylan Harper in an 85-84 win over Notre Dame. The Giants leave today for Dallas, play the Cowboys tomorrow, just 4 days after the blowout loss to Tampa Bay that caused two Giants, Malik Neighbors and Dexter Lawrence, to term the Giants as soft. Lawrence had more to say on that yesterday.
About the soft thing, I think you guys need to be held accountable for how you put it out there. I didn't say we are soft as a team. I said we played that way. We lost 30-7. That's not okay. We're in the NFL.
Giants unsure if Tommy DeVito will be able to play tomorrow due to arm soreness. If he can't go, Drew Lock will be the Giants' third different starting QB in the last 3 games. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports, Lisa Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. Donald Trump continues to fill out his economic team. His latest picks: Kevin Hassett to lead the National Economic Council, Jamieson Greer as U.S. Trade Representative. These latest nominations come after the latest threat of tariffs from the president-elect on China, Canada, and Mexico. Wei Li, global chief investment strategist at BlackRock, says investors are watching.
Markets are hoping for bilateral negotiation type of tariff announcement. But if we get close to a place where we're talking about across-the-board tariffs, I think that would be a wake-up call for risk assets, for equities and credit alike.
That's Wei Li at BlackRock. Joining us now, Terry Haynes, the founder of Pangea Policy in Washington, D.C. Terry, good morning. Is the president-elect giving investors more policy clarity with his latest picks?
Good morning, Nathan. And yeah, I think he is. You have, Hassett at NEC is, among other things, a familiar face and somebody who's not only a Trump loyalist, but somebody that's been around the block with markets for a while. Greer is, of course, very much in the mold of Lighthizer, who was USTR in the first administration. So I think the signal markets should take away from this is seriousness and pretty much what they expected. There will continue to be the three questions that surround the Trump administration on economic policy. You're starting to get the tariffs question answered, unsurprisingly, and second question and the third question about tax and fiscal remain unanswered.
So where does the priority lie? We did hear from President-elect Trump talking about tariffs yesterday. With Jamieson Greer coming in as USTR, is a 60% tariff on China that he talked about on the campaign trail still on the table?
I imagine it's on the table, sure. I don't think I would look for that immediately. Markets tend to whipsaw back and forth. Is Trump serious? Will Besant talk sense into him? And the answer to the either or there is yes. The answer is both. Markets should not think this is all one thing or all the other thing. What I do think, though, is that you have a situation where the president clearly intends to want to use tariff threats to manage the border, for among other things, and get international cooperation. And at the same time, I think what you should look for, and I think Besant's selection confirms this, is you should look for a more gradualist approach on the kind of heavy tariffs that you mentioned, in no small part because it's got to fit into an overall economic vision. I think the mistake markets make is that they look at tariffs very much in a silo, in a vacuum, without looking at what the rest of the economic policy might be. To my mind, Trump is somebody that wanted to fix and improve the economy. He doesn't do that by pursuing a maximalist tariff policy right at the beginning.
And what influence does Kevin Hassett have on that broader economic vision, particularly with the championing of tax cuts that we saw from Kevin Hassett in his previous role at the Council of Economic Advisors?
Well, I think it's a veteran. When you pick a veteran, for Trump, it is a sign of respect and a sign of continuity. So you've got that. Secondly, because you've got a veteran who Trump apparently trusts. Otherwise they wouldn't be brought back. See Mike Pompeo, for example. Then what you have is a situation where Hassett not only has an independent voice at the National Economic Council, but that he can serve as a moderating voice between Bessent and Lutnick, who might well have, we don't know this yet, who might well have different visions about how to proceed. And there's at least reported some personal antipathy between those two people. So Hassett very much serves as a fulcrum on the policy and does so sitting in the White House.
Just 30 seconds left, Terry. Is there still room for Robert Lighthizer in this economic team?
I tend to look at Greer as the Lighthizer pick. So, I think I would never count Lighthizer out on this. Clearly, he has the president's trust. But I look at Greer at USTR anyway as very much somebody that is kind of the next generation Lighthizer.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Lisa Mateo. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.